Alright YouTube, so we are back of course to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and today we're here to look at some translations from the Trace of Two Paths book, specifically the Aerith side of things. Somebody posted over on Reddit like a summary of the Aerith side of the book, and some pretty cool information in there, stuff like kind of more of the origins of the white materia that Aerith gets from Elmira. We learned about Aerith having like a childhood friend within the Shinra building. We learned like where Elmira got the house from. It wasn't originally hers, I suppose. Kind of interesting stuff, man. So we're just going to read over like all of the translations that the person has on Reddit. I don't know exactly what all we're going to talk about. We're not going to read the whole thing and then stop and talk about it. We're definitely going to stop at certain points, but I just don't know where we're going to stop at. So let's get into it. So quick shout out to HazeTiger7 for posting this on the Remake subreddit, but also it looks like they might just be pulling the translations from Stanley FF7. If that's the case, of course, shout out to them as well. Aerith had a friend named Ronnie, a child of a researcher who has been catering to Ifalna. Researchers would every day take Ifalna in the morning for experimentation and send her back to her room in the evening. This and Aerith sad seeing her mother getting ill every day. So I wanted to stop right there real quick because there are some weird like translations or something, because I'm assuming that last part's supposed to say this made Aerith sad seeing her mom getting ill every day. I don't know if this is like a typo or something from the person on Reddit, or a weird translation or mistranslation, or a typo from where they got the translations from, potentially Stanley FF7. I don't know, but there's a couple of these weird ones throughout these translations. But something else I want to touch on is, according to this book, they would take Ifalna in the morning and experiment on her like literally all day long and then send her back to her room at night, which is just horrible. Aerith's Cetra ability started to awaken. She started having visions and she began to draw and paint the walls on what she sees. Shinra used her drawings to send people to locations based on the paintings to find the promised land. But people kept dying or returned with Mako poisoning. Those who returned were sent to Shinra's secret labs for further experimentations, which resulted in the cloaked figures running around the slums. So a couple interesting things there. Whatever like Aerith would paint on the walls, like Shinra would send people to those locations to try to find the promised land. Those people would either die or get Mako poisoning. That's kind of interesting. But also, in a roundabout way, the cloaked figures that we have in Remake, and I guess maybe technically the original FF7, in a roundabout way, or because of Aerith. Obviously it's like Hojo and the Reunion Project and all that other stuff or whatever, but still, like, it's because of those people coming back with all kinds of Mako poisoning and then being experimented on by Shinra that we had those cloaked figures at all. It's kind of interesting. Most of them would gather in the train graveyard at night. Ronnie was told not to play with Aerith anymore. When Aerith stopped painting, Ronnie was allowed to play with her again, but Shinra wanted her to paint. Ronnie helped Aerith to fake a painting based on a picture of Materia that he remembered on a magazine. A researcher named Getty took the painting and went to the location himself. Getty went missing. One test subject escaped the lab and attacked Aerith, I think is what it's supposed to say, choking her and blaming her paintings for the death of her friends. This traumatized Aerith. So that right there, like, Aerith and Ronnie are directly responsible for this Getty person potentially being killed, or at least they went missing, because they faked a painting, faked like she had a vision of Medill. That person went there on a mission, went missing, and then somebody broke out of like the lab and attacked young Aerith. This was Aerith when she was a kid. I'm assuming the person that broke out of the lab was a fully grown adult and like choked her, and all this traumatized Aerith, which is kind of understandable. Fast forward in the present, Ronnie, who is a Shinra trooper now, with the wife living in Sector 7 and expecting a child, met Aerith again in the Sector 8 city. Aerith pretended to not recognize him as she does not want to remember her past. Ronnie acknowledged this. Aerith subtly acknowledged by making a silly face that they made together when they were little, and she strolled off. So that right there is the end of the first part. It's apparently called The Picture in the Past. I forgot to mention that earlier. We're about to get into what is referred to as Episode Aerith. But when it comes to that first part, I like that she has this like childhood friend that she ends up meeting when they're adults. He's a part of the Shinra like army now or whatever. I would love in like part 2 or beyond, when we come across just one of the segments in the game where we're going to come across like groups of Shinra soldiers, just have a character named Ronnie. He doesn't have to mention Aerith. Aerith doesn't have to mention him. They don't have to recognize each other, nothing like that. But it'd be so cool, just that subtle reference to this book, to have a character just named Ronnie. Or you can have them acknowledge each other, or maybe she does like the silly face that they talk about in the book, so that we know that she's acknowledging him, but they don't have to actually talk to each other, something along those lines. The story started on the boat to Costa del Sol. It was a luxury boat with Shinra troopers in the cargo area, since the elite guests do not take kindly of them. Aerith and friends were in Shinra uniforms, but we only get to see Tifa and Aerith talking. Tifa asked Aerith about where she grew up, and Aerith began her story. At first, Ifalna was treated with care with mild experimentation by Shinra. When Aerith had her ancient power awakening, painting the walls, they started to do more damaging experiments on her mother. So something I'm a bit confused by, that I'm not sure if like the book goes a little more into detail on, and maybe these are just like, brief explanations of the translations. But if they're already doing like mild, experiments on Ifalna, why would Aerith, showing her powers, visions and all this other stuff, why would that cause them to do more experiments on Ifalna? Why wouldn't they just experiment on Aerith, since she's the one who's showing her powers? Like, I know that Ifalna is also part Cetra or whatever, but if she's not giving them the results that they want, and they're seeing Aerith having these powers, like, be revealed, like, why don't you move on to her? Not that I want them to experiment on Aerith, I'm just saying that makes the most sense. By the time of their escape, Ifalna was already very ill. A Shinra staff, Fuzz Hicks, which is a weird-ass name, helped them escape by releasing some deadly monsters in the lab and stowed Ifalna and Aerith inside a utility cart and then a truck. There was a hint of a thing going on with Fuzz and Ifalna when Aerith saw Fuzz kiss Ifalna's hand saying goodbye. Ifalna dubbed their escape to Aerith as an adventure. So the last part's kind of sad. You see that in like movies and stuff whenever there's a parent and a kid going through like some terrible shit, but you don't want the kid to know the true situation, which is what they're doing here. Instead of saying, Aerith, we're leaving the Shinra building because it's harsh, terrible fucking living situation, we're gonna sneak in the back of a truck and leave this bitch. She says, we're going on an adventure, to kind of cover it up and make it seem fun for the kid. Also, I don't know who this Fuzz Hicks guy was, but apparently he might have been smashing Ifalna. They've been hidden a cargo crate to Sector 4 slum via train. They're supposed to meet Fuzz at the station where he prepared a house in Sector 3 slums, but Ifalna had other plans. Ifalna brought Aerith to Sector 5 slum station where she collapsed from a fever after running out of medicine. There were a few passerbys, but nobody helped them. Only a few carried Ifalna to the side of the platform. Aerith went away for a while to get a doctor, stumbled upon Elmira, but failed to find one. Aerith came back to see her mother with a blanket given by one of the slum people. So a couple things I want to touch on here. For one, I love that this book is referencing the Sector 4 and 3 slums. Like, those are locations we just don't really ever get to see when it comes to FF7. So it's nice that they're talking about it even if we don't get to physically see it. The other thing is, why did he fall on bail on that Fuzz Hicks guy? Like, the dude clearly was there to help her. He released monsters in the Shinra building, in the lab, which probably killed a couple people, if not a lot of people. He's clearly down to help. So if he had a house for them prepared in the Sector 3 slums, why didn't she go meet him up? And if they had met with him, he might have been able to get Ifalna to help, potentially, and she might not have died. Ifalna gave her the white materia in a small pouch. Aerith did not want it because she sensed her mother is going to die, but Ifalna comforted her, saying she will always be by her side. Ifalna described the white materia as good for nothing, but it was given to her by her father, who got it from his mother, who also got it from her mother. Elmira saw them, and with her last dying breath, Ifalna asked Elmira to take Aerith somewhere safe and dies. Shinra troopers started coming out of the train, and Elmira hurried Aerith away from the station, with Ifalna's body left at the station. So the main thing I liked there was that we get a bit of backstory on the white materia, dude. We always only ever knew, as far as I know anyways, that obviously she got it from Elmira when Elmira died, but apparently Elmira got it from her dad, who got it from his mother, who got it from her mother. Like, this thing has been passed down through Aerith's family for quite a lot of generations. And I'm assuming it's never really had to be used up until the Final Fantasy VII story, when we actually get to see Holy be used, so they always thought it was good for nothing. When they reached Sector 5 slums, Elmira apologizes for not being able to give Aerith a proper goodbye to her mother, but Aerith didn't cry. She said her mother had returned to the planet and she can feel her mother's presence. Reaching Elmira's house, which she inherited from her father-in-law, Aerith was amazed with flowers and vegetation growing there. Elmira's father-in-law was an important man for the Sector 5 slums. Aerith described him as a Don Corneo of Sector 5. Aerith confirmed to Elmira that Shinra was looking for her and her mother, so Elmira decided to hide Aerith on the second floor until the commotion dies down. So a couple things here. Elmira's house, which I guess we never really knew the origins of, she got that from her father-in-law, so her dead husband's dad. Also, apparently seems like I assume would be a pretty shitty person if he's a Don Corneo of Sector 5. That sounds like a bad thing. Something else that stood out to me from this is that whenever they reached Elmira's house, there's already the flowers and vegetation around there. And I always took it as that was because of Aerith, with her connection to the planet, being an ancient, being a Cetra. That's why those flowers and shit grew around the house, and also potentially within the Sector 5 church, but apparently that's not the case. Apparently Elmira's house is just special, I guess, because there's like no other flowers growing around Midgar like at all. Even surrounding Midgar, it's all a wasteland. Elmira's house seems to be a common place for slum people to rest as guests during hard times. An angry man visited that night named Carlo Kinky, which is another weird-ass fucking name, who was angry with Elmira about his signature in blood seal. I don't understand this either. Elmira told him off, and he went away. Aerith was a bit sad to be confined again, but complied, especially when Ifalna visited her at night in spirit form, telling her to get along with Elmira. Aerith explained to Tifa that Cetras can communicate with people far away, but she has lost that ability and is only able to feel it when she's in a deep place. So apparently Aerith was also visited by Ifalna, like, at Elmira's house, similar to how in Chapter 14, if you do the right stuff, you get the Aerith resolution scene. Aerith will visit Cloud also at Elmira's house. That's an ability of the Cetra that she can't really do anymore unless she's in a deep place, and I assume deep place means, like, sad, whatever the case, something along those lines. Also, the Carlo Kinky blood seal signature, I don't even know what that is. What was the point of that? My dudes, that is pretty much the video. That's all the translations on this Reddit post, and this video is already so much longer than I thought, dude. I tried to read over it as fast as I could. I tried to talk about each segment as fast as I could, and this still ends up being like a 10-minute video. Like, this is way longer than I expected it. I really hope in the next day or so this person does something similar with like the Tifa side of the book, because this is way more condensed and a lot easier to digest than just reading over like the actual literal translations that some people are doing out there that would take forever to read over. Alright, my dudes, that's the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys aren't new. So today, more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidbusiness. I'm in Discord. The links to my social networks are in the description. Into the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.